Welcome to Cocinarista Cook. Today we're going to make a classic Spanish omelet, una tortilla española. For every potato, medium-sized potato, you will have an egg. So it's a 1 potato to egg ratio. I find that I have to do an extra egg or 2 for 4 medium potatoes. We're going to dice our onions nice and thin and cook it up in a pan that's heating up with some olive oil. Now, some people start a tortilla española with raw, uncooked potatoes. I tend to pre-cook the potatoes in a pressure cooker. Bring it up like if you were making mashed potatoes. Cook up, parboil some potatoes to soften them. Reason why I do it, it makes making a Spanish omelet a little bit faster. And I just think it comes out better. Now, you don't have to do that. You can take a raw potato, uncooked potato, and make sure you slice it thin if you're going to start your tortilla that way. You will start putting in your onion, then potato, then onion in your pan that's heating, so that the onion helps cook the potato. If you already have a soft cooked potato, I do the same thing. I put the onions, then the potatoes in the olive oil and saute them until the potatoes are slightly golden. Not golden completely, but at least the onions are soft and wilted. So we're going to start doing that. I'm just waiting for the pan to heat up. Once the potatoes and onions are cooking, I will scramble up the eggs. Again, it's 1-to-1 ratio. I tend to put an extra 2. So if you have 4 medium potatoes, I probably do 6 eggs. I find that it's best that way to make sure that the Spanish omelet is completely covered. You do not want an open-faced omelet. So this pan has been heating with some olive oil, and we're going to stack in our onions, and potatoes. As you see, our potatoes are like the size of a potato chip. Some are thinner and thicker than others. If you are cooking with a raw potato not cooked, you could probably do a little bit thinner than this. You can use a slicing Madeleine slicer, yes, to make sure they're nice and thin. So we're going to put, as you see, we started off with the onions. The onions help cook the potato, tenderize it. Get some salt, and then we put in the potatoes. We're going to saute it until the onions have softened, a good 5 to 8 minutes, which will help the potatoes tenderize as well. Thinking that's a lot of salt, but don't forget there's a couple of ingredients here: potatoes, onions, and egg. Once I put in the egg, I don't worry about salting. Varieties of Spanish omelet. The typical one is potatoes and onions. Sometimes you could mix in some chopped peppers. Sometimes you can mix in some chopped chorizo, and it comes out with such a beautiful flavor. Parsley as well, and so forth. We're also going to be adding to this some chorizo, but I'll wait for this to cook down. Crack some eggs. Tortilla is usually served as a tapa, hot with some a tortilla is usually served as a tapa, nice and hot. You can also use the Spanish omelet as a great sandwich in a nice, beautiful baguette bread with some aioli mayonnaise. So we have our eggs cracked in, as you see, and we're going to add some milk. The milk I usually use here in Cocinarista Cook is skim, unless we're baking and it needs whole milk. But for beating eggs, we don't need that. We just add a little bit to add like a cloud-like substance. So you can still see the eggs whites and yellows. It's like if they were floating in a cloud. There you go. When you're whisking eggs, first make sure you break up your yolks and use the whole plate. Don't just bat in the middle. You should go back and forth to the whole diameter so you can get the whites well beaten. You don't want any clouds of white. Go to all your edges to make sure you get the egg well beaten. The pan had 2 tablespoons of olive oil. We layered it with our onions and potatoes, and of course our kosher salt. I put another 2 tablespoons of olive oil on top. And always start, I use a spatula, and I always go from the rim and turn it over. As you can see, it's starting to get that nice yellowish color. The onions are starting to cook up. Now, we did cut the potatoes potato chip form, but as you're cooking and folding it in, the potatoes will start breaking, which is fine. If you were using raw potatoes, the same thing would happen. They would be starting to wilt and break down. Cook. This needs to cook up some more. It's on a medium-high heat. We diced up some chorizo here, which we will add because the chorizo itself will add some beautiful color and flavor to our tortilla mixture. Again, you do not need to add chorizo. It's just an added ingredient. Again, you can also do peppers. You can do many things. It's almost like making a quiche or an omelet. The only other trick to a tortilla española, besides adding the right amount of egg ratio, is the flip. Volca de la tortilla, a plate to help us flip the tortilla. But we will do that once this has been doused with some egg mixture. So we'll wait for another 5 or so more minutes. Within that time, the onions should be nice and golden. Also, the other reason why I didn't add too much extra salt is the chorizo, which is cured Spanish salami, has enough salt in there. You never want to oversalt your food. You want to season your food. Now here we have the potato nice and golden. The smell is stupendous. So you see that? Now there is some people who drain the potato prior to adding the egg. You can do that. I don't do that because I've seen many people who don't do that. So, before I add the egg, since the potato has taken most of the olive oil, and what you have right now is a little bit more water due to the onions and the potatoes, I add a little bit extra olive oil around the perimeter of our pan, the edges, so the egg does not start. There's another 2 tablespoons. We make a little pockets. We're going to lower the heat right now. One good thing about gas is you can lower it and it lowers quickly. If you're using an electric stovetop, just remove the pan for a moment before you add the eggs. As you see here, the eggs have been beaten because they were very bad. No, nicely. They have a nice froth to them. And we're going to add the egg to a much lower temperature pan for the moment. We added our egg. We're going to raise the temperature now. And we're going to let it cook. Every once in a while, just scrape the edges. Now we just have to let the pan get back to temperature. before we do the magic of the flip. Yeah, see, as you see, the potatoes are covered. You want to make sure you have enough egg to potato ratio. We had 4 good potatoes here. I actually had 4.5, and I did 6 eggs. I poured it on top. We're going to make this cook a little bit before we flip it. Right now the edges are cooked, and it'll be easy for me to make a pocket. The edge will always cook faster than the zender. We're going to have a tough time flipping this one. But that's okay. Here's the Spanish omelet before we flip it. As we see, right here, the edges. And it's not just the edges. You can tell that this is cooked all the way through except for the center. Also, when you take your spatula and run it around the circle, you see that it's pretty much all together. We're going to take our plate. If you're afraid to spill anything, always have a prepared bowl or over the sink, whichever of the two. We have it covered. And flip. Ta-da! Now, before we put it in the hot pan again, yes, our friend the olive oil. And it's approximately like 2 tablespoons. 2, 4, 6. This will be now another 2. And now we are going to let some of the egg mixture drain in there before we slide it in. And tuck in the edges. Yeah. Now we'll just tuck in the edges. And now we're going to let it cook for another few more minutes before we flip it. I do tend to wash this plate for presentation for serving. The plate is because we have to now flip it out of the pan to serve. While that's cooking, it'll just be a few more minutes. Remember, cooking on a medium high or in the middle right now for it to completely finish cooking, and we'll have a beautiful tortilla española, or Spanish omelet. The truth, the tortilla is done. We will flip it onto our presentation plate. Voila! La tortilla española. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. It's quick and easy. Remember, you can do many varieties of la tortilla española. The traditional one is your onion and potatoes. Serve it hot as a tapa, or serve it great in a baguette bread with some mayo and aioli, or aioli mayo with lettuce and tomatoes. It's the perfect meal. Enjoy! Buen provecho!